Okay, Miss Wilson is going to be reading The Relatives Came. It's one of my favorite books because it's very relatable, and you'll see why. They have the dedication page. This is where the author's able to dedicate their book. This one, she has a couple of families she dedicates to, so I'm assuming that this might be some relatives. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. And you see them packing their car. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop. We would probably call it Coke. And some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. And I love it because when you see they've got like the mailbox on the ground and they look like they're flying and stuff's flying off. Kind of like how my dad drove when we'd go on family vacations. They drove all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. You see them going up and down the mountains. I don't know if I'd want to be in the car with them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Now look at this. The fence is knocked down, but everybody's so excited. This reminds me when I would see my cousins. We'd be so excited. And then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us up against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. And it didn't matter. Everybody's hugging you. Even people you might not want to hug you. Then it was into the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorway. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Oh, those relatives. So is it like that with you? When you go see your family, everybody's wanting to hug? My family, everybody's wanting to hug. Right now, that's not very good social distancing. And finally, after a big supper 2 or 3 times around, until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk. And we broke into 2s and 3s throughout the house. So, kind of reminds me of potluck. You have all that good food. They make a couple of rounds and then they break up into the smaller groups so they can have quiet talk. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us and the rest slept on the floor. Some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that breathing in the house. And I love this. You got the dog sleeping. You got everybody in bed. And we would shove, when my relatives came, we would shove as many people in bed as we could. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden, and they fixed any broken things they could find. And look, they're even doing haircuts. I'm thinking they need to fix that broken fence that they knocked down. Don't see that on here. Oh, here we go. They ate up all our strawberries and all of our melons. They promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. And I love it because they are fixing the fence here. And look here. They have some music going around, singing. Fiddle. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging, eating, and breathing together. I love how they say breathing together. We don't think about the fact we're all breathing together right now. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and they had headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and we waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our bed that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. So when you've been with a lot of family, it kind of feels lonely after they leave. They might get on your nerves because it's so loud, but then it seems so quiet when they're gone. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses in different mountains. And they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent beds, their silent, soft beds, and they dreamed about the next summer. So I love this book because this book can be something we all can relate to. Maybe our family's bigger or smaller or whatever, but we know what it feels like when all of the families come together and all that excitement, and how sad it is and lonely it is when they leave.